Chris Whittingham has made his triumphant return all the way from
Welcome back, Whitty.
great broadcasting success. And Apple, spending a lot of time making Apple look good because Apple needs a lot of help, as we all know. They have purchased all the people, and all of them work for Apple. We all have a daily and weekly charge that Apple just takes from our account. And I, at this point, can't even keep track of what it is that Apple's taking from me.
I just hope MLS season pass is one of them.
They're giving it all.
Be one of the charges.
They're giving it all to Whitty. I am grateful as well here to have David Sampson because, Stugotz, I told you, I've been wanting to talk to him about what's going on. There's a lot of serious stuff going on, and we'll get to the silly sports stuff in a second. Billy's calling an FIU game tonight, which I'm very excited
Full
about.
play-by-play?
I'm one of the analysts.
Nice.
Yeah.
For the full 60 minutes?
Are you the two?
Yeah, full
Are you the
game.
two?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You the two?
It's Vice night today.
You the number two guy?
No, we don't need to get into numbers.
Three-man booth?
David, you're invited to join if you want. I heard that didn't go well last time. I didn't invite you to something.
Are you going to play it straight, Billy?
We're figuring that out still. We'll see how that goes. I think I know what they need me for. And
How much prep have you done on YouTube?
Analytics.
Well, it's UTEP, so I know that much. I'm cramming. I'm not going to lie. There's going to be a little bit of cramming going on because things have been a little hectic around here lately, so some cramming going on.
Who's UTEP played so far?
UTEP, they're 1-5.
That doesn't answer his question.
Well, they had a bye week. They're coming off of a bye, so they're fresh. But it looks like their
doesn't answer
looks
his
like their
question.
fourth-string quarterback.
Do you know what UTEP stands for?
University of Texas El Paso. Boom.
A good
Can I
start.
suggest that you print a roster, Billy?
Oh, I'm good. Don't worry. I'll be okay.
Get the flip chart. The
Yeah.
flip chart in the press box is massive.
The minors.
Both rosters, either side, depth charts in the middle, pronunciation guide down the bottom.
Yeah.
Massively important for a
Rough
broadcaster.
loss to Louisiana Tech last game, Dan.
Who is their
UNLV.
one win against?
Their one win is against Incarnate Word.
Is it Word or Ward?
I mean, it's WORD.
That's word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incarnate Word. Didn't Ricky Williams used to coach
Yes,
Incarnate
he
Word?
was the running
What?
backs coach. Yes, that is correct. That is
Billy, what is the amount of
The
money you will
Cardinals.
be paid for this?
I'm doing this as a gesture out of the kindness of my heart. Yeah, for my
Oh, God, can I
alma
give you some
mater.
advice?
What's that?
Why are you doing that?
Well, I want to do it for my alma mater, they asked me,
Right.
so I'm going to do
This
it.
is in
Nice.
lieu of donating to the school.
Well, I don't make enough to donate to the school.
Chris Cody just said pro bono, which I don't think is the
Isn't
right.
that when you do it for something for free? Is that what that means?
Fairly certain it is.
But not this for free. But not this for free. This is.
Is it only being a lawyer you can be pro bono for free?
I think of pro bono as a legal term, not a sports broadcasting term. Generally, not an FIU against UTEP term.
Vice night, Dan. Are you going to head out there?
We will get to Billy's.
Doesn't answer his question.
He hasn't answered my questions about how much he knows about what he's going to be broadcasting tonight. But I am grateful that David is here because he took his time. He wanted to be prepared. He didn't want to react instantaneously on Monday to the atrocities in the Middle East. And so he covered it for 30 minutes on Nothing Personal yesterday. And I suggest you listen to it if you want what I believe to be a measured response that he tried, I don't know how successful he was, to take some of the emotion out of it and speak plainly about some of the things that I think we can all agree on. Stugotz, I told you on Monday, I woke up, this has never happened to me before, not from drinking, not from sickness. I wake up Monday morning and I'm just so sick, and I'm not actually sick, that I just vomit because what I'm seeing is that kind of horrifying. So I think the thing that we share in the human condition is the initial thing is to be shell-shocked, and then the next thing should be to condemn violence of any sort against innocent people, to condemn hatred of any kind, terrorism, acts of terrorism, and to condemn anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. I think reasonable people can agree in those places. But where do I go after that conversationally, David? I know that people can't even agree on that, right?
Right. You're already wrong.
Okay, but we can't agree on anything. But I think reasonable people can say you shouldn't go immediately from a slaughter at a school to talking immediately about gun control and talking about the politics and the places you can argue. The slaughtering of innocent people, I think we can all agree as human beings. not right in any way, and needs to be condemned loudly at every turn. But where do we go after that?
Well, I'll tell you where I had to go today, because I spent about 10 minutes of the show that it just got released, that I just recorded before this, responding to certain of the extreme responses that I got as a reaction to my Nothing Personal episode yesterday. And it made me very sad, because I heard from it from both sides. I heard from Jewish people who said that how dare I in any way comment that it's possible that there are Palestinians where there could be an argument for a two-state solution, or there could be an argument where the pro-Palestinian rallies that are taking place are anything other than anti-Semitism, which they are. But they were angry with me because I did not simply say hard stop, that it is absolutely unacceptable. What I said is unacceptable is the terrorism, and that's the hard stop. What I also said is there is a real discussion to be had, and it is a real debate that you can have on how to figure out the geopolitical issues that exist in that region, whether or not a two-state solution, what you do with Gaza, whether or not what Israel has done is correct in every way or incorrect in every way. Those are meaningful discussions where reasonable people can differ. But the people, and I don't want to call them friends, I'll call them acquaintances, because as I said on the show, people use that word too much. Too many friends. I don't have that many friends. I have a lot of acquaintances. But then I heard from people on the other extreme telling me that the Israelis, the women, the children, the babies had it coming because of the way they've been treated as Palestinians. And what really bothered me about having to deal with that is it reminded me that we are now in a world and in a country and in a world where the extremes are the loudest, and the people in the center with no emotion, which is my specialty, we're being quashed. Because if you don't have the emotion and you don't have the extreme view and you don't yell the loudest, then you're not going to be heard because you can't be right. And this situation in Israel, it calls for people who are rational and unemotional. Because what Hamas did was not based on rational thought or behavior. They did it because they want to kill Jews. That's all they want to do. And that's what they did, and they're not going to stop. The reaction of Netanyahu in Israel is not measured. He is going to wipe out Gaza, empty it, kill them all. Innocent people, guilty people, extremists, people in the center, people who are innocent. And is that going to get to a solution? No, but he has to do it. And so now we're in a position, because Hamas did this, that we are taking steps that will be decades, at least, before we can possibly find a way to return to any sort of rational behavior or existence there. And that is part of the problem. And we've seen it happen in other parts of the world. We've seen it happen in African nations when this type of genocide and murder of civilians happens. And it sets them back economically. It sets them back religiously. It sets them back from a human condition. So I spend today not vomiting, Dan. I spend today wondering what we can do with our platform to try to be louder in the center, and whether or not there's even a chance when you're yelling into the wind that you just stop because you lose your voice. But I don't plan on losing my voice anytime soon, Dan.
Do you think there's a chance? Because I don't, David.
I don't want to say that, Stu, because the minute I say it, I'm defeated. And the minute, why do it? Why do a show? Why use your platform to try to explain to people what's actually happening? And why, if you're going to be quiet, it's the old story when you're in a legal fight and you're told you have to stay quiet. Remember that Trevor Bauer, I had to be quiet. I was in the middle of a lawsuit. Now I can tell my truth because there's no more lawsuits, whatever his truth is. And I only bring that up because that's the most recent example of someone who was forced to be quiet and then was thrilled to not be. It's dangerous when you don't have to be quiet, but it's way more dangerous when you do. So, Stu, I'm not willing to.
What else has been surprising to you about the reaction to what it is that you did? I again will tell the audience that he spent, this is difficult to do as subject matter, 30 minutes talking to yourself by yourself about this is something that John Oliver has 20 writers to do once a week on subject matter that is that is this historic and this dense and has this much polarization around it before you arrive, Stugotz, at what seems to me the basic formulaic simplicity of any human beings can understand. Don't slaughter innocent human beings. Like that seems
Most can,
that
yes.
seems to be a pretty easy place for most people to agree on things. But when we arrive at an escalation, Samson, from suicide bombers, right? An escalation from suicide bombers where you don't think there can be an escalation because this goes back for so much time. I don't know how it is that any of this can be discussed reasonably. Like, I don't know the smart way to discuss this with people because it is so charged emotionally.
But the reason that it's charged emotionally is that people pay attention to what they're seeing and what they really what they think they believe. So what has been troubling me the most about the reaction, which was your initial question, is the excuse that people are now using of this terrorist attack to manifest their hatred, their general hatred of people, specifically Jewish people. But really, if you're going to hate one type of person, you're just a hater. If you're prejudiced, if you're racist, it's not that you're racist just against black people. You're racist against anybody that doesn't look like you or think like you or talk like you. And Jewish people have this position where we are forced to defend our feelings about anti-Semitism as though we don't deserve to feel the way we feel because, hey, you're all rich or you have it coming to you. But that's not, to me, what our discussion should ever be framed about. It's always got to be framed about what is it about what we do that makes it that you feel you have to view us the way you do. And you can put anybody in the us category. Anybody, Asian, Jewish, black, brown, whatever your prejudice is, whatever you feel is happening to you, because it's real if you feel it. And I don't know how to deal with the fact that people are emboldened. I'm not going to blame Trump because people do when it's convenient, where they're emboldened to be racist. They're emboldened to be anti-Semitic. But when people feel that they can act in a certain way because they are covered by the masses, that's when you actually get major societal disintegration. And that's where we are. And I'm not saying that we can't talk about sports or the world is coming to an end or look out, the sky is falling. I'm saying that people feel more free to exhibit what they used to keep quiet and hidden. They're now emboldened to share it. And that scares the shit out of me.
Dan, there are two separate discussions to be had as it relates to this. One is the land and who should be living on that land, and that's a discussion for another time. That's not for now. It's what Hamas did, and we can all agree that what they did, it was a terrorist act, and it was wrong. They killed innocent people. They killed innocent babies. They raped innocent people. They killed them after they raped them. That's the discussion that should be had, how they're going about doing it. And the interesting thing is how it's carried over to the United States, because David's right. People are emboldened right now, where I have Jewish friends who are afraid to walk out of their apartment in New York City because Palestinian flags are flying everywhere, and they're Jewish, and they're afraid to walk outside. They don't want to wear their Jewish star necklace that they usually wear every single day. They're almost ashamed of being Jewish.
You say there are only two discussions to be had, but David covered this on Nothing Personal. That's not exactly what was happening on the campuses of Harvard and Yale. It wasn't just two discussions that are being had. But I know that in trying to talk about this with Jeremy earlier this week, he couldn't do it. He thought he was going to cry. He couldn't get in on the conversation because he couldn't get through the emotions of, I feel unsafe and people who I love are unsafe. And it feels like anti-Semitism is alive and well because look at your television. Look at this. Can't be okay by anybody.
Yeah. I've had like a million different thoughts run through my head this week. I am Jewish. I have family who has chosen to live in Israel. Americans who have made the decision to make the trek and now live in Israel. There was a time where they lived in what was considered occupied territory in Gaza, thanks to my aunt and uncle basically bullying them to move. They moved, and thank God they seem to be safe right now. But what's complicated about this, as a very left-leaning American Jew, is my own thoughts on Zionism and Israel and Israel's government are one thing. That's a conversation to be had, as Stu said, somewhat at a different time. Because what's happened now with Hamas is a blatant terrorist attack. You can talk about the desperation and the poor circumstances of the Palestinian people in Gaza and feel that level of sympathy for them without praising what Hamas did. And no different than, and it is slightly different. I won't say no different than, but no different than I wouldn't want everyone around the world to view me as an American citizen based off of whoever my elected leaders are. I, as a Palestinian, wouldn't want to be painted with a blanket, I'm a terrorist or a bad person who's automatically anti-Semitic and hates Jews because I live in this territory that, by the way, I've been displaced into. And we can get into the nitty-gritty of why Israel as the Jewish state exists in the way that it does, and the establishment of it through all of these governments in Europe and the United States post-World War II because of a systemic Holocaust that wiped out the Jewish population. That's the reason all of these Palestinians are displaced. We make this an argument about Jews and Muslims and territory when realistically we're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands of years of all sorts of religious ideologies persecuting against the Jews and against the Muslims. White Christians in Europe forcing the hand of the Jewish people to flee for their lives. But now we are in this never-ending hellscape of terrorist attack from Hamas and horrendous, the things that are going to happen to the innocent Palestinians that are about to happen as a response through these airstrikes and the cutting off of food and water. That's also inhumane. I don't know. This is not me doing a both sidesing. This is also not me. I'm not trying to say that whatever Israel does can even come close to what we've witnessed in these videos of what Hamas has done. It's completely inhumane. It's unfathomable. But it's put me in this position of thinking and talking in circles because I don't believe there are solutions here. With like the toothpaste is out of the tube, and there is no way. Like we've seen it for hundreds, if not thousands of years. There's this desperation and this lack of solution, and it stinks that we don't have the time or the patience to take a moment to just breathe in the horror of what's been done before jumping to all of these other conversations about the why.
Oh, but I think that's what happens when people feel entirely helpless, when they want to have some control over something. So this is why conversationally it seems like everyone has an opinion on this. Everyone is trying to get in on a conversation. I think it's just a mass helplessness. But David said something about not wanting to make this the end of the world. It's not a big step from here to the end of the world, David. I'm not even dabbling in hyperbole. Like, once you reach these levels of escalation on desperation and the countermeasure is going to be as, comparably horrific to what it is that you just saw in terms of innocent people.
Dan, you are. I'm sorry, but you are dabbling in hyperbole. And I didn't listen to your show when back years ago when there was genocide in Rwanda, or during the if you
but what escalates to world war is what I'm talking about. What escalates to
this does not. So one of the things that we do have to keep in mind, and I am sensitive to this because I'm Jewish. However, there are many people. This is a little off the subject. There were cast members on Survivor with me. They had never met a Jewish person. Never. And they were adults. I think sometimes I forget, because I live in New York on the Upper East Side, what it is to be a minority because I'm surrounded as a majority here. The fact of the matter is that around the country and around the world, what's going on in Israel, it's not great. They read about it, they know a little bit, and then they say, all right, what are we doing tonight? It's not the end of the world for the world, because these types of things happen to all sorts of people. It's not just the Jewish people. It's not just the Palestinian people. Look at the civil wars in Africa. None of it is the end of the world, and none of it is leading to a world war, because no one will escalate it to that. That's the war game situation. It's not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that we can be like Jeremy's saying, which is in paralysis. We can't do that. But we certainly shouldn't be where you are, which is waking up and vomiting, saying it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. So I think that I live somewhere in the middle of that.
David, I completely understand that, and that's where I would like to be. I think the reason I feel paralysis is I generally, just as me, the individual, feel helpless. It's people who are making a lot more money and have a lot more power who are going to be the ones who decide this, and they have not been doing a good enough job for the last 100 years. And yes, there are things that I feel grateful to be on this platform, getting to just talk through my emotions. I'm grateful that you have the platform that you do to be able to lay out the facts the way that you have as well, because I think that speaking about it with some rationale and speaking about it through the way that we have here is important, so that people who are uninformed can learn. Because I think that the biggest thing here is we are in a society, as you mentioned, that is so quick to jump to opinions on everything, particularly on social media, particularly within extremes. And so, you've got all sorts of people on social media right now. We were talking a little bit before the show about, the blue checkmark replies on Twitter right now are
Staggering.
Some of the scariest shit I've ever seen in my life.
And a lot of fake videos, too. A lot of
Yeah.
AI, a lot of stuff that you see around propaganda that's meant to create disruption and division on purpose. It's one of the dangers of social media being controlled by a few with political leanings, that you get a freedom on social media that distorts the truth in a way that's acidic and poisonous.
Oh, you mean somebody who comes from an apartheid state running the most important social media that we have for information being a bit of an issue? Maybe. Look, the part of it that is complicated here, again, as an American Jew, is I've faced anti-Semitism before, but it's never been in a it's often not in the blanket way that we look at those things. It's been meeting a kid before winter break of my freshman year who, when I told him I wasn't going home for Christmas break, that it was Hanukkah break for me, he looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Some kid from the Panhandle in Florida. And then as soon as I told him, hey, I'm Jewish and you've known me all year and I'm no different than what you knew before, I looked around my classroom and I said, hey guys, who else is Jewish in here? And like 5 other kids raised their hands, and he was shocked. And I was like, yeah, you've been interacting with Jewish kids all year long and you had no idea. Anti-Semitism comes up in different forms, and it is not anti-Semitic to be critical of Israel's government, but now anti-Semites are using this as an opportunity to be violently anti-Semitic, and that's the part that is mind-blowing here, disappointing, and continues to leave me in this horrified state.
Jeremy, I would just tell you that you do have the power, and it's one at a time. It's one person at a time. So if you think you don't have the money, you don't have the gravitas, it's not true, because in your circles, in your everyday interactions, what we all have to do is only what we can do, which is when we come across people, it's just to have conversations. It's just to talk about that there are different sides to the story, and that we are all just people. And it sounds so syrupy and so rainbow and unicorn, but it's up to everybody individually, because if you say that you can't do anything and you've got a platform bigger than most, then imagine what you're telling people who feel like they're just up against it,
You're right.
With nobody listening. I think everybody has someone listening, because the most important way to stop racism, forget anti-Semitism, how about all racism? It's to educate the next generation so that they can ignore the way their parents are. That's the only way it's going to stop, is when people see their parents as racist and say, wow, I'm not going to be that. And you know what? It happens a lot in my circles. There's a lot of 80-year-old white baseball people who are racist. And you know what? There's a lot of 50-year-old white baseball people who aren't. So it can change. And then maybe it's what we always dreamt about with building generations of fans. It takes time. But for people who think they don't have power, I disagree. You do have it, Jeremy. You got to use it.
Welcome back, Whitty. Just some light stuff for you here to start your return. We will segue into lighter sports stuff after this. David, I'm mad at the Orioles.
Oh, geez.
The Orioles were great all season. I was watching them. They're young. They've got 15 guys under contract who are under 23 years old, and they get smoked by one of the former Marlins pitchers who is dominating the
So many of those.
postseason.
Yeah.
Evaldi was here. He was one of the first I ever saw. Honestly, this transformation, this revolution, Evaldi was one of the first I saw where I was watching it. I'm like, he throws 100 miles an hour. How is anyone hitting him? David, I know Nolan Ryan and a bunch of others. I'm saying.
What about Matt Lindstrom?
No, yes, Matt.
What a name.
Matt Lindstrom as well is in that category. But Evaldi as a starter, when you brought him up, I thought that guy's going to be great for a long time. And he is going to be great for a long time. Not in a Marlins uniform. He was never great in a Marlins uniform. Just like Brad Hand wasn't any good and was an all-star when he left the Marlins, just like a bunch of other people weren't any good here and now are good in the postseason.
What's your point?
That the Orioles got stuffed yesterday by Nathan Evaldi, who wasn't even good the second half of the season. He wasn't even healthy the second half of the season.
That's not exactly what happened. I don't know if you watched the game. Actually, that sounds like you just watched the box score. What actually happened is the Rangers' offense is as good as the Braves.
That's not true. That's not true. That's simply not true. That's not. That's what you're saying is simply not mathematically true.
You did watch the game?
The Braves. No, that part was true. The Braves are the 1927 Yankees in terms of offense. There's been nothing like them except the 1927 Yankees.
It's funny. We used to talk about the 27 Yankees when you guys would criticize, and Mike and Billy and Chris, you would criticize when we would trade players, or we would say, hey, we're not breaking up the 27 Yankees. We couldn't even win 81 games with these great names on offense. And then the Braves come out, and they really are the 27 Yankees, but the Rangers are just as powerful and just as deep in their lineup, and they crushed Dean Kramer, and I was rooting so hard for him without taking emotion into it, but he pitched for Team Israel and he wanted to take the ball. He had the worst outing of his season and the shortest. He only went 1 2/3. He got rocked by the Rangers, who are a streaky team, and they're on a streak. They're on a heater, a bender, which means they're not going to lose that game yesterday, no matter what Evaldi did. So I would say Evaldi was the least and the smallest factor in the Rangers.
The Orioles scored 1 run, David. They scored 1 run.
Are you mad at the Orioles or at the playoff format? Like, who are you mad at?
I am mad that teams...
I had no idea you were such a big Oriole fan.
I am mad that the teams I know to be good this season, the Rays, the Orioles, the Braves, and the Dodgers, clearly better than everybody.
The Orioles scored 8 runs on Sunday. It's not like they scored 1 run all series.
I'm mad at the Orioles. I
They
already
didn't
said
get swept
that.
all year. You know what? I'm mad at them too, Dan. I'm with
Score
you.
bandit.
No, David, you know what's going
That's an
on here?
accusation.
Dan desperately, because the Orioles were a big part of our childhood, of us growing up, of us falling in love with baseball, with those teams, with Earl Weaver and Eddie Murray and got Gary Renicky and John Lowenstein and guys like that, and Al Bumry, that Dan wants the Orioles to be relevant again. And you know what, Dan? I'm coming around. I agree with you. I, too, am mad at the Orioles.
The Orioles didn't get swept all season. The Rangers
I'll do it
didn't
in
win.
October.
The
were
Rangers
due.
didn't win a game from a starting pitcher in like 7 weeks the second half of the season.
I tried to tell you like 3 weeks ago there was no need to start SportsCenter on a Sunday night with the Orioles, and you guys didn't want to listen to me. Told me it's such a great story. And what happens first playoff series they have, they don't even win a playoff game. Waste of time.
Can I tell you a quick story that I got yelled at by my baseball people and the manager at the time? This was a Girardi thing, and also a Jack McKeon thing. I always viewed when pitchers were on a great streak and had not given up a run, that I wanted them to give up a run, and I wanted them to be put in a situation where the game was out of reach and give up a run, because then they wouldn't give up a run when we really needed them not to. The sweep is the same situation. You say the Orioles have never been swept. Well, the odds are they're going to get swept. Everybody gets swept, and they chose a really bad time to do it. So would you ever think it's weird to purposely give up, like if you've gotten 5 hits in a row, just get an out because you're not going to get 10 hits in a row or you haven't given up a run. Just throw a meatball in, give up a run or blow a save. I always used to think about that, and I never won those
I don't
arguments.
think you know how odds work. If you think that a team not being swept all season, the odds are that they are then going to get swept. No, the odds would be that they're not going to get swept because the sample over 162 games suggests that they're not going to get swept, no matter how baseball is.
I actually don't think that's how odds work. Do you think when you get 20 blacks in a row at the roulette table that the odds are more that you're going to get red on the 21st or black?
I'm talking about not a 50-50 chance on something. I'm talking about a 100-win team that wasn't swept
zeros.
once over 162
First
games.
time for everything, Dan.
I love breaking the streak on that roulette table, though. If there's like 7 straight blacks,
best.
I'm betting that red.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's coming.
Yep.
I don't care what the odds
can
say.
also-
Eventually.
we are
Yes.
due. And you can really start to lose confidence, like when you're an always hitter on 16, and then it comes out for you like 3 times in a row. That 4th time that you do it, you're like, I'm really tilting against the odds here.
Can we stop with the
Casinos
27
are built
Yankees?
on people making irrational
What?
decisions based on streaks.
I think the most disheartening thing in gambling is when it lands on green.
Oh, the worst.
I always put one sad chip in between the 2 greens. Because I'm like, I got to have something.
There's so many sad chips in the roulette table.
This way I won't lose too much. That's your view, Chris. That's your money
Little
management
hedge.
view.
Little green hedge.
What
It is a dream. You are a dream for the casinos.
He really is.
What was your takeaway over the most interesting thing for you as someone who cares about baseball in the first 2 weeks of what it is that we've seen in the postseason?
That I'm disappointed that the narrative has changed so quickly and that baseball let this happen. They let the narrative start by announcing the Tampa Rays attendance is so low. And then the narrative continued with the announcement that ratings are down 18% for the wild card series and that the broadcasters are upset because they're not getting long series because that's what they want and need. And that the big teams are losing. The big teams did not make the playoffs in Yankees, Red Sox, Mets. And now the teams that are left are the Dodgers, which is a nightmare when they get swept by the Diamondbacks tonight. And so I'm upset that people are now using this as a pile-on reason. It's like confirmation bias. Oh, baseball's in trouble. Oh, I don't like baseball. And there was such a great opportunity after such a great regular season to have a great postseason. And so far, it's been very, very underwhelming.
So they told the truth.
I'm not a big fan of that when it comes to marketing.
Same here. A couple of liars cutting it up. I mean,
Put that on your tombstone, man.
He's not a big fan of the truth. They simply told the truth. Tampa's attendance blows, and all of the randomness is affecting that the best teams are getting knocked out. And I don't think anyone wants to see a Rangers-Arizona World Series outside of those cities.
I'd like to know if David were in charge, how would you have promoted the baseball playoffs? Like, what would you have said?
The first thing that I would make sure of is that the Dodgers don't lose tonight.
Really?
I'll start with that.
Okay.
I will make sure
Fixing
that the
games
Braves and
now,
Phillies
right.
go 5.
Right.
That's very important. And I want to make sure that 2 Texas teams were not in the LCS, so I'm screwed in that regard because it's going to be. And that's a nightmare for baseball.
David, how do you do that? How, like, because people used to say this about David Stern. It's like, oh, like David Stern would make sure that the Lakers series would get to 6 games, and he made sure that the Sacramento Kings wouldn't get to the NBA Finals in 2001. Is that a real thing?
There's a simple fix. Toss Angel out there and anything can happen.
like,
He's
is
not
there
gonna
is
get
there
a
an
chance.
ordering of the code red from the commissioner to make longer series?
No. David,
Yes.
what do you
He
know?
made it seem like there is.
No, let him
He said
answer.
yes.
David, you're gonna co-sign. You're gonna endorse the commissioners helping fix or tilt the odds in the
no.
favor of a certain opponent.
I am going to endorse because I've seen it. There are the umpires in baseball and the referees in basketball are very aware of the following. They're aware of who the stars are. They're aware of what the series score is. And they're aware that basketball wants long series. So if you think that calls aren't made or not made when they can be controlled in order to potentially impact a game, and I'm not talking about Tim Donaghy. I'm not talking about betting on games or fixing games or wanting LA to win like Lewis, that referee. And I'm not saying MLB umpires are betting or fixing games or that the commissioner is telling them to. What I am saying is there are meetings with umpires before every game. I've been in them. The meetings go over what's going on in the game. What are we looking for? What are the trends that we're seeing? What do we want to protect against? And one of the things that we want to protect against is short, bad series. Does that stop sweeps from happening? No. Does it guarantee a 6th or 7th game? No. But when you can be helpful, are you? Is there a time? Let me ask you guys in the NBA.
Dave, you're
How many
not. You're
times
not.
Did you say, "Wow,
David,
that foul wasn't
David,
called"?
you're not far from making the accusation. You don't want to make the accusation, but you're not far from making the accusation that the umpires and referees know that they can control the game so that they can get the business to where the business needs to go. And it doesn't always work, but they have such a control over the game that it's not an edict, but it is an ordered code red. Like you're very close to making the suggestion that the stuff, if not
I'm not going to
fixed,
let you aggregate this or to put words in my mouth. So let me say it very clearly. The referees and the umpires cannot dictate who wins a game, but they are very aware of the situation, and the league is very aware of what they want in a given situation. Now, the Marlins won the World Series in 2003 and beat the Cubs, and baseball did not want it. They were clear that they didn't want it, but you can't control an 8-run eighth. So you cannot dictate result, but you can definitely try to form a result. And that happens.
Is this like a home plate umpire goes in with the mentality of, okay, the team that's losing 2-0 in this series, anything borderline is a strike for them, anything borderline is a ball for the other team? Like, is that the way that we're talking about
I feel like
here?
we're giving these umpires way too much credit.
That's also
in a
fixed,
quick-
by the way. That's also fixing
Well, right.
the game.
That is a
That's
quick
why I'm
decision
asking
they
the
have to
question.
If you think there's no human element in referees and umpires, you're absolutely incorrect.
That's not what I'm saying. You're saying that the business element oversees all. That's what you're saying. In a way,
Business element is a huge
but
part
the
of this.
arbiters are supposed to be impartial. They are supposed to be immune to that. And you suggesting that they're not, while not outright claiming a fix, is suggesting a distortion that feeds conspiracy fans who believe that the results are ordained.
It's not scripted. It's not ordained. But if anyone's been watching sports for the past 40 years, how do you not agree with what I'm saying? How have you not seen it through the course of your fandom when you look and say, wow, that they're not fouling out that player. That player definitely committed a 5th foul and a 6th foul. They don't want to give early foul trouble to a star in a big game. Sometimes it happens because there's no choice because it's so obvious, but other times they swallow the whistle. How many times in the NBA do you see 2 guys go up and foul, and they give the foul to the one who doesn't have 4 fouls, to the one who's not Luka Doncic?
That's because the other guy was like, that was me. Sorry, ref.
Have you ever seen that?
So how do
It
you
happens
play?
all the time.
Yeah.
They put their hand up. No, that's on me.
Oh,
Because they know that they're
this
okay.
happens in soccer too, where you don't give second yellow cards in certain situations. There's sort of an extra step for a second yellow card offense than a first yellow card offense.
This is picking up some steam, Dano.
But at the same time though, like in this particular thing though, the answer for me with refereeing has always more been incompetence than conspiracy. And if you lend any credibility to the idea that conspiracy is potentially in play, then it allows your fans to think that the results are sort of not on the level, which is sort of completely destroys the whole thing. The whole thing of watching sports is there is this neutral plane upon which this game is being played.
Well, Whitty, you just talked about yellow cards. So what happens in soccer?
I believe that there's an accepted star treatment bias that is universally considered by all that isn't quite the commissioner letting the umpires know, hey, we need this to go 5 games, that those are 2 different things.
Well, and also, I mean, to your point, David, there is definitely a different standard for fouls that occur in the first 10 minutes of soccer matches than fouls that occur in the second half. Referees do not want to give red cards in the first 10 minutes of games and, quote, ruin the occasion, especially if they're big games.
Well, hold on a second, because David, are you saying there's communication between Major League Baseball and the umps, or the umps just know?
Are you saying during the game there is no
Before the game.
Before the game.
There is always
he is
communication.
saying that. Yes, he is saying that this
There
is
are meetings before every game, Stu.
and they're communicating, hey, it'd be nice if this series went longer.
That's idiotic. I mean, listen, you sound like a second.
Well, how do you do it? I'm wondering, is there a wink?
You're sitting here.
Stu wants there to be $100 bills being slipped.
No, but
If there's a tie on the door.
when Stugotz says we're gaining steam here, and Billy and Stugotz come in, they both gave me finger guns today trying to compete on who's cheating more right now, the Braves whistling or the Astros. And now Samson
There's accusations is all we're saying.
No, you both.
Pablo Torre will find out. We're just saying.
You and Stugotz.
We plant the seeds.
You and Stugotz came in here today, and your baseball analysis was the Astros and the Braves are cheating. That's all you had in the name of analysis. And Samson is here to tell you, hey, it's being whispered about in those closets that the umpires gather in before the game.
They're not closets, but they're not.
The one at Joe Robbie was. Don't tell me it wasn't a closet. I do. The one at your stadium absolutely was a janitor's closet.
The Joe.
When you build a new stadium, you actually have to build umpires a nicer room, but we gave them the cheapest shower heads and sink things. What are those faucets? So there were different levels at
Sink
the new
things.
ballpark when you're allocating faucets and toilets and what kind it is. And we went with the kind of flusher where you can use your foot, the side flusher.
David, you're like actively discouraging them to be on your side.
Want to buy them.
If we're talking about the human element, come on.
Get him a Toto, you know what I mean?
How much money were you saving as you tried?
That's the other thing.
I mean,
You're saving 10 grand on
$1,000
faucets?
a toilet.
You're buying military toilets for like $40,000.
Had a trough.
With bidets and seat warmers.
You're going to have so many overruns if you ever build something, Dan. You have to save things $1 at a time. They add up.
I am building a home.
Our toilet paper is pretty flimsy here.
Yeah, we don't have that 2-ply.
You're right, Chris.
David, you're telling me that you actively gave the umpires what you believe to be the worst toiletries available to anyone in professional sports?
Oh, I don't care about anyone in professional sports, but the people in the suites get really good toilets with good flushers and nice faucets, and there's a different level of, it's called FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And you have a budget for it.
With
You give nice stuff to people who are paying you the most money. And you give the worst stuff in the upper deck and in the umpire's room and in the visiting clubhouse, by the way.
That explains why Dinkinger was shitting into a hole then in the ground whenever the Marlins play.
Is that the funniest umpire name you can think of?
It's the best.
David, between LeBron and Shaq wanting the franchise in Las Vegas, what do you imagine when basketball does end up getting to Las Vegas? What is ownership going to look like there? Is LeBron going to have the ability to pull off ownership in Vegas more than Shaq?
I think I'm going to get in trouble because I talked about this on today's show, Nothing Personal, that's out now. NBA wants LeBron over Shaq, there's no question. But people thinking that LeBron is going to be able to be like Jordan, he's not. In order for LeBron to be the control person of an expansion team, the NBA is going to have to change its rules. And query, will they? Because they want LeBron in there. But he doesn't have the money to pay the expansion fee and to be the control person and to be the biggest equity holder. And there are rules that the NFL has, the NBA has, that MLB has about what an owner has to put in and what percentage of the team the main owner has to have. That's why you have Magic, who is a great part of an ownership group, but it's really an outward-facing part. LeBron is the type who wants to be in charge. The MLB had this issue with Jeter. When Jeter wanted to be the control person, MLB said, no, you're not allowed to be. You're not putting in enough money to be the control person, so it had to be Bruce Sherman. But Derek Jeter got to run the team. My view is LeBron doesn't want to run the team. He wants to be the Bruce Sherman of the Vegas team, and I don't know how he's going to do it. But the NBA will find a way because they'll choose LeBron over Shaq, as they should. But they have to change the rules, and I don't know that he'll get the votes to do that.
But David, isn't LeBron's involvement with that to do with his involvement with Fenway Sports Group, who are apparently the actual financiers of that whole thing?
And
it's
Redbird
not
Capital. Of
right.
course, that's where he's going to get his money, the same way Jeter got his money with Sherman. So I understand where LeBron can come up with the money to do it, but I'm talking about him being the name. There's one guy, and that's it. There's one control person of every franchise. How does LeBron become the control person versus being in an ownership group? He can be in an ownership group in Vegas, and that's going to work. But my view of LeBron is he'd want to be the control person.
But I mean, that's impossible in both the NFL and the NBA at this point. When teams are going, I mean, that expansion fee is going to be what, $5 billion for an NBA team in Vegas? At least $5 billion? Right. So I mean, there are how many people in the world that like are individuals, not as part of venture capital firms that can afford that? It's 150, 200 people in the world can afford to pay $5 billion before you even build an arena, before you even do anything.
Jordan's the only athlete who's ever been in the Forbes top list. He's now worth $3 billion.
But what was the Charlotte?
That's after he sold the team, though.
No,
yes.
and also, like, what were the Charlotte Hornets worth then? Were they worth 350 million? NBA teams used
totally
to be affordable.
different,
It's a completely different world than it was in the late 2000s. Did the Milwaukee Bucks get sold for like $300 million at the time? That's preposterous now compared to what you buy an NBA team for.
It's the same thing like what your MLS did with Beckham, giving him an option when he signed with LA for $25 million to get an expansion team, and the owners were okay because they wanted Beckham to have it. The owners are not going to give LeBron an option for an expansion team at a reduced fee because they need the expansion fee money to pay down their debt. So LeBron is not going to get what Beckham got. And frankly, I don't know that anyone will ever get
Messi
what
didn't
Beckham
get
got
that
again.
The reports are that Messi sort of got offered a piece, but that will never ever happen again. Especially, I mean, that purchase option you said was $25 million. I think the most recent expansion team into MLS, San Diego, is at $500 million.
David, wouldn't most groups want LeBron to be their control guy?
It doesn't matter what they want. It matters what the NBA rules are.
Right.
And the rules are that if you're going to be the control guy of a partnership and on the board of governors with the NBA, that you have to own a certain amount.
Which groups, though, Stugotz? A billionaire doesn't want to give LeBron more control than the billionaire has. Like, you think somebody wants to give LeBron the control?
If it increases the value of your franchise, if it makes better players want to come there to play for you, I would think that some people would be okay with LeBron being the control guy. Yeah, Sherman did it.
But Jeter wasn't really the control guy.
Not well, and he wasn't the control guy. He just sort of looked like the control guy. I would assume that anybody buying in for that amount of money would want everyone to be their employee, period.
You also, by the way, saw with Michael Jordan what happens when you are the control guy. And you've kind of seen it to a lesser extent with LeBron when he's been gotten free reign on the teams. Like, he could be the greatest basketball player ever and not know how to successfully run a basketball franchise.
Billy, we are completely aligned. When I said that Derek's good at being at shortstop, it doesn't mean you can be a CEO. It's two very different skills. And Jordan found that out. It's funny, his reputation is not tarnished because his team went up so much in value. But can anyone say that Michael Jordan had a successful reign in charge of a basketball team?
No,
I don't think so.
But it doesn't preclude you, though.
No, it's also not a shot at them. It just is one of those. It's like sometimes the best players aren't great coaches.
Yeah,
like, it's
doesn't
just
mean
different
LeBron
skill
would be
sets.
bad at it.
Yeah,
It's an easier sell, Las Vegas,
but he might
than
not
Charlotte.
be good.
But he might be good.
But he might not be. Oh! No one's ever been. That means no one can ever be.
He might be average.
It's impossible to be if no one's ever been.
He's not going to be
They might just be okay.
Odds are, because the Orioles got swept, that the next one will be good.
You and the O's, man.
Samson, we don't have any time for your movie review. I urge the people to listen to Nothing Personal. He takes great care to cover subject matter. I will tell you again that not a lot of people are doing, never mind alone, but not a lot of people are doing at all. Nothing Personal with David Sampson. Thank you, sir. We will talk to you again next week.
Take care.
Thank you, David.
Take care. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10:30.
Okay.
Or
Thanks,
tomorrow.
David.